Morning. Today is the 10th day. Zantov of second Adar, and the 20th of March.
20.
And we're on page 130 in Derech Mitzvotecha. Mitzvahs Machatzit HaShekel, the half shekel. So yesterday we put these two parables together. What the Zohar says about the shekel being the filling of the yud, the full filling, the yud being the stone, and the vav dalid being, meaning the stone's put on the right side of the scales, and the vav dalid, the merchandise that you're putting on the left side of the scales. And one is supposed to push down to lift the other. And the way this works is, I for some reason, I don't know why, in my mind I kept thinking that it had to be pushed higher. But no, it just has to balance. That's the point. So if I put the merchandise in the beginning down, I put it on the scales. So the scales are completely tipped. Right? So the left pan is touching the ground. And then when I put the yud on it, the stone, the first letter of the filling of yud, yud vav dalid, so the yud goes on this side, so it balances. And then we said it also, that's called machriya. That's called that it's, even though machriya is that it's even a little bit more, but it doesn't matter. The point is that it lifted it off the ground. Now he says, this is the same, we're going to use this parable to understand the usual parable. What's the usual parable that we have? Why do I feel like I'm in the wrong page suddenly? On page 130, right? Yeah. No, sorry, because I am on the wrong page. It's not 130. I am on the wrong page. I was looking in the book before, and in the book I was on the right page, but here I'm not. Yeah, so it's 131. No, it's now 132. We're at page 132. Sorry. On page 132. And then he put this together with the other main parable that we have of the worlds, of how the worlds work, that there was a world of chaos, is what we call it, and this caused everything to shatter, everything to break down. And the result of that shattering is that we have a reality that's full of sparks of holiness that are now stuck inside, and we want to lift them. That's the main parable of the Uri. It's called Birur HaNitzotzot, the clarification or the sifting out of the sparks of holiness, lifting them up. So lifting them up is a beautiful thing. So now you think about the scales, and you see that that's exactly what this yud is doing. It's taking something that was on the ground, the left pan, and it's lifting it. So we can use this parable to understand what the placement of the stone on the right pan is doing to the sparks in the left pan. Really what it's doing is it's lifting out of the ground, it's elevating the sparks out of their situation. A little bit earlier in the book, we didn't see this. He writes about two types of birur, two types of elevation or clarification, meaning bringing out the sparks. This is a common thing throughout the Chasidus and throughout Kabbalah, that there are two clarifications, two birurim. The two birurim, the first one is done by Malchus, it's done by kingdom, by the sphere of kingdom. The second one is done by what? What does clarifications all the time? Bechokma idbariru, wisdom. So one is done by kingdom, one is done by wisdom. What's the difference between the two? So in Torah Or, he deals with this a lot, because that was a relationship between Joseph and his brothers. That Joseph, they thought it was like them. What did they do? They were shepherds. So they basically worked the land, they tilled the land. Not as farmers, but they were working with the land, and the sheep that are eating and the grazing and all that, That's the first clarification it's called. That's called the clarification of kingdom. That you use the resources in the world, first of all, to elevate them from their inanimate state. Right? Because if the spark is in grass, or in the water, or whatever it has to make its way, first of all, into a human being. The human being is the first, if it's not in a human being, I don't know how to take a spark out of a sheep. Right? So the sheep has to provide me with something. It provides me with wool that I wear. It provides me with meat. It provides me with milk, whatever it is. All these things are called the clarification of kingdom, because kingdom is like dealing with nature in its raw form and lifting it, first of all, into the state of being a human. Once it's in the state of being a human, this is the value of human life, from here I can perform the second clarification. And that was Joseph. So the brothers, they were busy with clarifying with kingdom, meaning that they're with Malchus, they're transforming the natural world into a world that is human. Right? But they didn't see that Yosef had a different role. He wasn't there to work with them in the same way. He wasn't supposed to be a shepherd, and he wasn't. He was supposed to shepherd people. So there's shepherding the animals, and there's shepherding people. He was the shepherd of the people. He's the wisdom. And we see the Joseph is called Safnat Panech. He's the wise one. The one who knows all the secrets, and especially he knows
no
this.
one ever had more control.
Right, over people. Right.
Time.
Not only that time, probably always.
Yeah, so I'm saying no. It all. I mean that. Yeah.
Yesterday, I don't know where this came up. I don't remember, but in one of my classes, so we talked about there's a certain lineage. In the Arizal, souls are in lineages. They're like there's chains of souls that are related to one another. So Joseph becomes King Solomon.
Wow.
And he and King Solomon are considered to be the same lineage of souls. And afterwards that becomes Daniel, who's the greatest advisor to Nebuchadnezzar. He's also like a ruler in that sense. He's like a Joseph in that sense. He solves dreams and all that. In any case, that's the second type of clarification. So here he's going to focus on the second type, not on the first type. He's not going to talk here about the first type, which is kingdom. He's assuming it's already, why? Because we're talking here about Machatzit HaShekel. What's a Machatzit HaShekel? It's about a person. I'm bringing the half shekel as an atonement, as it were, for me, for a person, for a human being. So we assume the first clarification has already been done. It's already been lifted. The sparks have been lifted out of the ruins, let's call it, of the world of chaos that was shattered and fell down. And again, what does this mean, the world of chaos and all that? We'll see in a second how he's going to describe it, but the usual description is, actually he's going to say it very short here, but the world of chaos shattered and broke because of the feeling of self, because of the feeling of being separate, because of the feeling of ego. So it's talking about also people in our reality. It's not, people think, if you're in England, so what do they have there? They find fish and chips, and they also have runes, right? What are runes?
You mean ruins? Yes.
Not ruins, runes.
Oh, runes. What is runes?
Runes. What are those? So that's that writing, Druid writing. You know what Druids are. There was an ancient people in England.
What is that?
There was an ancient people called Druids or something like that.
Pure.
Yeah, and then they were from the spiritualist period, where the world, at least in England, had not yet discovered, even Christianity wasn't there yet. There was nothing there.
Yeah.
It was pure animism, pure spiritualism.
Right.
And they lived very close to nature, whatever, and they saw nature as God. Something like that. They were a form of pagan polytheistic religion. We don't know culture. So the English, they find this and they say, "Oh, this is our ancient ancestry." So a Jew also has runes. What's my runes? My runes is, instead of saying paganism, instead of saying polytheism, my runes is when I felt that the only important thing in the world was me. Before I discovered how to come out of myself. what led to the shattering, the destruction of those cultures was that they were polytheist, that they were pagan. They couldn't survive. A culture that's not monotheist can't survive. That we already know from the world. Monotheistic cultures survive, and polytheistic ones don't. It's a common thing that we know. So for me, personally, who's my polytheist? I was never a polytheist. I was a sort of polytheist. Why? Because I held myself to be like God. Yes. So in myself, there's ruins of runes in me. And these runes, they're like the way I used to write about myself, think about myself, see myself, that I'm separate from God. That separation, that I can go and do anything I want, that's my demise. That was the demise of the previous world. And that every person carries in him. In the same way that in the Kabbalah, it says there was such a world in general, and it shattered and broke, and now we have to lift the pieces up. So every person is doing that personally, inside of them, individually. There's the period, and every day I come a little bit out of that. So every day, the previous days is runes that I still have to carry with me to think, how do I extract the holiness that was there? There was holiness also because the holiness was trapped in this impossible situation of believing in myself as some kind of God. And again, it doesn't have to be that I look at myself, and I worship myself. Every person feels that there's something special. Every person feels that this is not the same thing as identity. You can have identity and not be separate. In the same way that, for instance, a person who's playing on a football team, on a soccer team, whatever it is, he has an identity. Everybody knows what his name is, but he's part of a team. He doesn't act, and if he begins to act like he's separate in some way, the team loses. They can't function. So it's the same thing about how I act in the world. What do I feel more? Do I feel more connected to everything, or do I feel more separate from everything? So in my past, especially in my teen years and in my 20s, and in my case 30s, 40s, and 50s, I'm always separate. I'm always looking out just for me. I'm not looking out for the general good of the world. So that means that I have ruins in me. And those I have to elevate. So this is what this stone is going to do. So now let's read it quickly, now that we have all this in place. Okay, I'm looking 8 lines from the top of the page, 132. והנה היוד עצמו זולת ועבדה לו כלים בו עצמיות החוכמה מה שהיא במהותה ועצמותה זולת מה שכוללת את שלמטה ממנה. So the yud, we said it's yud vav dalet. So the yud itself is the wisdom itself, without what it's going to be working on, everything that's outside of it. The vav dalet is what's outside of it. And it's via nikret avna lemishkal ba'et vav dalet shayu beibur v'itkalulut ba. And it's called the stone that you're going to put on the scales, and it's going to elevate the vav daled, to the second and third letter of the filling of yud, which is initially, it says here, it's very interesting, it's in a state of being impregnated inside the yud. Because when you look at the yud, when you say yud, most people don't think that you can write it out, Yud Vav Daled. They just think the name of the letter is Yud. Then they start learning Pnimius Torah, the inner dimension of Torah, and they realize, wait a minute, each one of the names of the letters in Hebrew can actually be written out. It's a word. Yud Vav Daled. What does Yud Vav Daled even mean? So there's all kinds of etymologies. It doesn't matter though. It's a word. Yud Vav Daled. So the Vav Daled were impregnated. They were like in the womb of the Yud, because you called it a Yud, and now the Vav Daled are coming out. So what do these Vav Daled represent? כי הנה ידוע השבירה שהייתה בעולם אותו הוא רק בבחינת זת שאין המידות הנקראים Vav Daled. So these Vav Daled, they represent the 7, we talked about this yesterday, the 7 sfirot of the world of chaos that shattered and fell down. Why 7? The Vav is equal to 6, and Daled is the Malchus. So we have 7 here. Vav is 6, and we said yesterday that Netzach and Hod are together, which is why you start from Daled, from Da'at in this case, and not from Chesed. So it's Da'at, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. That's the Vav. And the last letter, the Malchus, is the Dalid. The Dalid and the Vav Dalid. Okay? So these, they shattered, they fell down. This is where all the holy sparks come from. So this stone that you're going to put, it's going to lift them, it's going to retrieve them. אבל בגר לא הייתה שבירה, כי דכתיב ימותו ולא חבר חוכמה. We said, why is the chokhmah, why is the wisdom the one that clarifies everything, that elevates everything? Because it never shattered, it never broke. Because it says in Job 4:21, they will die but not in wisdom. ולכן עצמיות החוכמה שהיא יוד פשוטה היא אבנה למשקל בה ואבדלת. So that's why the simple yud, the first letter of the yud vav dalid, is like a stone that you place on the scales in order to lift the vav dalid. Now, even the word scale in Aramaic means two things. Mishkal in Hebrew is a scale, and in Aramaic also. But in Aramaic, when you say mishkal shakal, what does that mean? To take. Lishkol in Aramaic means to take. Mishkal. So it's taking it, meaning it's lifting it out of, by placing the yud, the wisdom on one side, you're lifting the emotional character traits from all the way from knowledge all the way down to kingdom. You're lifting it up. וכשמניחים אותו על כף אחד מכפי המשקולת, היא מכרעת כנגדה את הסחורה המונחת למטה בארץ. And that's what the scales do. You put it on one side, and everything lifts on the other side. בכף שכנגדה, ומגבעת אותם למעלה. כמו כן, in the same manner, when a person receives חוכמה אילה, when a person receives the supernal wisdom, what happens to them? How does it affect them? יורדת ומגבעת את הניצוצים שנפלו בנוגה דביעה. It lifts the sparks of holiness that fell into the klipa of noga of the three lower worlds. That's what, and that's me. We're talking about me. We're not talking about in the world. People, when you learn Kabbalah, you're thinking it's all in the world. When you learn Chasidus, you realize that the most important place that this happens is in you yourself. Ki b'chokhmah yitbariru ve'azay, because there's this principle that everything is clarified, everything is sifted through by wisdom. Wisdom, in the other class that they're learning here, that I took over for 2 weeks, learning eter. So there he has a very nice explanation that the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that's like the malchus, that's like the kingdom, the first clarification. Why? Because it just tells you the difference between good and evil. But it's a clarification. Is something good or is it evil? For instance, should I eat stone or should I eat meat? Which one? So my dat, my knowledge, which here is acting like the first clarification, tells me, no, don't eat stone. That's not going to work. So you need to eat meat. You need to eat vegetables. You need to eat these things. So I get the first clarification. But then the tree of life is the wisdom. Okay? That's why you need both of them. He's not saying you shouldn't eat from the tree of knowledge. You should, but only really after you've eaten from the tree of life. The tree of life is the Torah. What he says here, wisdom, he means Torah. He says without Torah, you don't know how to do the second elevation. So when a baby comes out of his mother's womb, he doesn't need to start eating to be. He already is. What he's eating is extra. It's to make him grow. But once he's big enough and his mind starts working, he right away needs Torah, because otherwise what he's going to be eating, what he's going to be doing, is not going to be elevated the second time. It's just going to stay where it is. Without Torah, there's no ability, there's no wisdom. There's no ability to make the second elevation. The second elevation is completely dependent on Torah. Here it's called wisdom. Everywhere in the Kabbalah it's called wisdom. And so what does this do? It lifts the sparks of holiness out of, again, the sparks of holiness were the good stuff that I had in me, even yesterday when I still worshipped myself or felt myself separate or whatever it is. There's still some goodness there, there's still some holiness there. And it lifts it, ואזי מתעלים למעלה בעולמות העליונים להתקלל בעתיק ועריך ובאבי על דרך מה שכתוב בעץ חיים שהמובחר נכלל בעתיק. And it goes all the way up to the highest part of the crown. Why up to the highest part of the crown? Because the highest part of the crown, it really becomes on the cusp, on the link between the creation and the creator. That's the highest level it can reach. That the spark of holiness was really meant to be like a feeling of creator, but not of me, not that I'm the creator, not that I'm the one who's doing all this. It's that Hashem is doing all this. I'm returning all the energy there. והטעם שהחוכמה דווקא היא המבררת, ועל פי מה שכתוב, כולם בחוכמה עשית. Why is it that wisdom is the one that clarifies everything? It's according to the verse in Psalms 104:24 that you have made everything with wisdom. Meaning, שהמשכת אור אינסוף בכל עולם ועולם על ידי התלבשותו תחילה בחוכמה שבאותו עולם. Because the descent of the infinite revelation of God in every reality, in every world, begins always in the wisdom in that world. What is wisdom in that world? So what does that mean? ובאמצעות החוכמה הוא מאיר אחר כך בכל העולם, כפי שהחוכמה היא בחינת הביטול, because wisdom is self-nullification. The moment that a person has self-nullification, again, this is all the second clarification, so that we're talking about a person. So the moment that it has self-nullification, or let's say it's a table, how can a table have self-nullification? It can't have self-nullification, but it can be nullified. How is this table nullified now, Yaakov? We're learning Torah on it. The moment that I'm using it in order to... So it's nullified now. It didn't have much of a say before either. No. But before it was noga. It was something like it was useful, but we didn't know what we were going to use it for. The moment we decide to use this piece of furniture in order to study Torah, the moment I decide to use my phone to say a class, or something like that, then it moved from noga. Noga means that it's useful. It has utility. So I'm using the utility now to connect it to godliness, and that itself is the act of nullification in an inanimate object. Or in food, if I eat vegetables and I use the vegetables in order to learn, to do a mitzvah, whatever it is. So the vegetables have utility. They definitely. Stones also have utility, but I have to build a house of prayer with them. I can't eat them. Everything has its utility. So almost everything is in the world of noga. Some things don't have utility. The trash, you have to work really hard to get some utility out of it. But there is still some noga there. There is still some sparks there. It's not. Again, we just need bigger machines to get it out, and then you have to think, what do you do with it? In any case, everything has utility, so everything is connected in some way. And when you bring it up, you elevate it through the wisdom that enters it. And the wisdom means that it's nullified to holiness. The infinite revelation of God cannot dwell unless the person or the object is nullified to it. Not someone who feels that he's something special, he's separate. He's a yesh, he's a separate being. As the sages say in Sota, in Tractate Sota, that a person who has gaiva, who has pride in himself, I and him, says God, cannot dwell in the same place. ולכן נמצא שינויים בעולמות שבאצילות גילוי אור אינסוף יותר מבבריאה, ובבריאה מיצירה, ויצירה מבעשייה. So therefore, since everything is elevated higher and higher, then each world is less a feeling of self. Atzilus, emanation, is no feeling of self at all. Then you come down to creation, there's the possibility of self. You come down to Yitzir, there's already a mixture. When you come down to Asiya, you come down to the world of action, there everything seems to be only about me. Everything seems to be only about my actions, and so on. And why is this? Even though the infinite revelation of God is the great equalizer. It's like the soviv, it's like the encompassing light. It makes everything equal in front of it. That's because in the world of emanation there's more wisdom creating more nullification. So that's why so what's happening here? That the light of the infinite could be equal in every single place, in every single world. It just depends. So let's talk about me, and we'll finish with this today. That if my consciousness is in the world of emanation, what that means is that I've raised myself to a place where my nullification is complete. That I don't feel that there's anything here except for God. If I feel in my consciousness that I'm only at the level of God is a possibility. I'm a possibility. God is given, but I'm a possibility. There's a possibility that I also exist. Then I'm already in the world of creation. If I feel we're half and half, God's here and I'm here, so then I'm in the world of formation. If I'm in the world of action, it means that God is a possibility and I'm the given. And I'm for sure here, and God's a possibility. We have to think about whether He's here or not here. The whole academic world is in the world of action. Because what do they think? They're not, unless they're completely in the klipa, completely in the husk, where they say there is no God, forget it. There's nothing to be nullified to. It's all a figment of your imagination, something like that. But normal people are usually in the world of action. Their consciousness is in the world of action. Again, the infinite light is the same everywhere. But depending on how much nullification there is, that's how much it will be revealed. So in the world of action, there's almost no revelation of it. So people look at the world of action. People live in the world of action, which is a great place to live. It's not a bad place to live. The world of action saves you from a lot of problems. The main problem that people who are spiritual have is that they have dissociation. They dissociate from reality. They don't get reality right. I'm one of those. I'm not completely associated with reality. So I have in one of my classes now, the way we do it now is that I speak for an hour, and then somebody comes and he gives practical examples. And I listen with complete awe at these practical examples. I say, wow, that's amazing. How did you get from what I said to like such a really useful piece of advice for someone? And he's a good businessman. He's a guy who's worth a few $100 million, and he does this for me, like now. Not because it's for me, it's because it's for the whole organization. And it's amazing what he does. I listen to, and he's very deep, and he gets it completely. And then he translates it into some kind of reality that's the dispute with another business. It was like this, was that. And it's all based on exactly what I said. But I would never see it. I would never figure it out. I mean, if the people would come to me with a problem, I would look and say, I don't deal with these things. I deal with things that are spiritual. So if you live in the world of action, it's not such a bad thing, as long as you also live in the world of emanation. And you can hear that there's also only God. If you can hear that, then you're already in a good place. Okay, so we'll continue tomorrow.
You talked about trash having utility, basically. Something like that.
That's Noga. Noga is utility.
There was a Rav in Sfat who told me the story. He went to an altar Sfati who was in Sfat during the war.